What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and welcome to today's hype video where we're going to be hyping up the Philadelphia Eagles and their Week 5 matchup against the Minnesota Vikings this year. Very much a game Philadelphia needs to get some momentum, needs to regain that momentum in a big way at home against, a team that I know our fan base has developed a little bit of a rivalry this offseason. They've become, in my opinion, the saltiest fan base in the league. For those of you that have been out of the loop, basically, there was a segment of the Minnesota Vikings fan, a loud vocal segment, that thought the Eagles fans were too mean when the Vikings tried to take over Philadelphia, and they were actually trying to make like a petition that the Philadelphia Eagles should be disallowed from going to the Super Bowl because our fan base was so mean. And that was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen a fan base, especially an away fan base, do at a NFL game. So that's kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Plus, I mean, come on, get over it, accept the loss, and move on. Like, I saw less bitter Falcons fans after that Super Bowl collapse against the Patriots than I did Vikings fans just super upset that, oh no, it was supposed to be our freaking year. We had the miracle at the new metal in. No, what you had was a Saints rookie whiff on a tackle that gave you guys a hope and a prayer at going to the Super Bowl. And then, old Nick Foles just smacked right in the goddamn jaw. So what we're going to talk about today is 10 key things, 10 storylines, 10 keys to victory, 10 talking points for this upcoming game. And we're going to jump in at number 10. Is Mr. Jim Schwartz had a press conference, and he says he is reaffirming that Jalen Mills is his starting corner, and this was kind of what a lot of us expected. It's not what we want to hear. We want to say, literally any other thing would have been ideal. Rasul Douglas will be taking his spot. Sidney Jones will get some reps on the outside. Jalen Mills is moving to safety. Jalen Mills is benched. All those would have been acceptable options, but we know that Jalen Mills is Jim Schwartz's ride or die. Jim Schwartz, I firmly believe, will fall on the sword and defend and play and stick Jalen Mills out there until either he gets fired or something drastic, or Doug Pearson needs to step in and flex his head coach muscles and make a change. And also looks like Corey Graham, who had maybe the worst play I've ever seen a Philadelphia Eagle player have, when he just let the one wide receiver on his side of the field when we're doing that picket line defense on 4th and 15 in overtime, get behind him somehow. He's staying at safety. They're going to be working in rookie Avonte Maddox at safety. He's pretty undersized to be a safety. He's much more of a slot nickel corner, but he does have good ball skills, as we saw him get an interception against Marcus Mariota and the Tennessee Titans. So our secondary is pretty much going to be the same against the Minnesota Vikings that we saw against the Tennessee Titans, and that was not good enough. That was simply not good enough. The only good fact is we're going right to point number 9, is Philadelphia better hope that their defense form at home, where their defense is night and day better at home, continues, because the Minnesota Vikings currently have the number 5 passing offense in the league, and what we saw against Tennessee Titans with a average offense at best, not a gunslinger in Marcus Mariota, which we made him look like a gunslinger. We had Corey Davis let his breakout game. I don't think he had more than 100 yards in the first 3 games of the season, and he had 160 against the Philadelphia Eagles, and you saw just a bunch of missed passes between the Tennessee Titans that if they could complete those, it would have been a lot uglier. Now, on the other side of the sword, if you're talking about that Tennessee game, Nelson Aguilar had a bunch of drops. We had a bunch of drops as well that could have turned the tide in our favor. It's not just like, oh, yeah, well, look at the Titans and all these drops. Philly had a lot of drops in that game as well. But more so, you need to bring it back to, if this is the secondary from Tennessee that we're rolling with, the exact same one, they're going up against Minnesota, the number 5 passing offense in the league, the offense that, you look at a good Rams defense, even though that game was an absolute shootout. I mean, that Rams defense, you'd probably would say on paper, at least from a secondary standpoint, better than the Eagles, and still got worked by the Minnesota Vikings. So that's a little bit of a worry. So we need to hope that home defensive form continues. Go number 8 is Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, and Kirk Cousins throwing the ball worries me, but we'll more so focus on the wide receivers right now. This is one of those things, man. It always just feels like the cornerback matchup, sticking their cornerbacks, kind of like the Seattle Seahawks, where Jalen Mills stays on one side of the field, Ronald Darby stays on the other, and they put them on islands, right? Like, it always feels like the offense is mismatched, because you look at Adam Thielen, you look at Stephon Diggs, you would assume Jalen Mills on Thielen, because Thielen's not as fast and a little bit more physical, and Mills actually suits up decently to try to cover Adam Thielen. And then you got a more shiftier guy like Diggs. You put them on Ronald Darby because Ronald Darby's a little bit better of an athlete. Burner can keep up with them, and it's just we thought that was going to be the case against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We thought we'd see Jalen Mills, the bigger, longer, clearly a safety playing corner, go against the bigger Mike Evans, and then you have Deshaun Jackson on Ronald Darby for that speed matchup, and it was completely opposite. You had Evans go up against Ronald Darby. You had Deshaun Jackson go up against Jalen Mills, and the rest was history. We lost that game. So I'm kind of looking at that and seeing if that's going to be something the Minnesota Vikings are going to want to try to exploit. Put Diggs on Jalen Mills and put Thielen on Ronald Darby, because we know for sure right now what we've seen from Jim Schwartz is he does not like to make any sort of adjustments for whatever reason to his game plan. He's like, this is what we're running, and it's either going to work or it's going to get us burned. It's kind of like a Chip Kelly a little bit. Getting Chip Kelly vibes when Chip Kelly on his offense was so adamant on doing what he wanted to do and not adjusting like a good coach should. I'm kind of starting to get vibes like that from Jim Schwartz. Goal number 7 is Kirk Cousins' career with Philadelphia has been pretty good statistically. He's 4-3. Because, for those of you that don't know, he used to play for the Washington Redskins. But in those 7 games, 2,100 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and he has 1 rushing touchdown. Most people know. I mean, it seemed like his last year in Washington, Philly got the better of him. They had a lot of forced fumbles and a lot of costly turnovers in that game that were beneficial to the Eagles. But for the most part, Kirk Cousins always has pretty strong games against the Philadelphia Eagles. And now you can debatably say, outside of maybe that 1 year that the Redskins made the playoffs, he has much more weapons to use at his, like before he pretty much had, he had slot guys like Crowder and guys that can work the middle field like Jordan Reed, but he never really had a perennial outside guy after Deshaun Jackson left. Now you have 2 of these guys that can play on the outside, and they both offer great versatility because they can play on the outside and the inside in Thielen and Diggs. Plus, you need to add the wrinkle that Frank DiFilippo is the offensive coordinator. He's calling plays. He was our quarterback coach, very good quarterback coach. So throw in the fact that Kirk Cousins has historically pretty good numbers against the Philadelphia Eagles. You have an ex-play caller coming to town. We saw when Philadelphia took on the Indianapolis Colts, where our former OC is now the head coach there in Indianapolis. Like it did feel like, it was an advantage to the opposition. It felt like they knew more about the Eagles than the Eagles knew about them, and that was frustrating. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on for the Vikings and how they plan to attack the Eagles offensively. Number 6, turning towards the Eagles here a little bit. Jared Goff absolutely killed the Vikings defense. If he can, Carson Wentz can. Carson Wentz is a better quarterback than Jared Goff. Might not have as good of playmakers right now, but I feel like just you put it down to a quarterback. Jared Goff is probably the biggest system quarterback in the National Football League right now. You know why? Because you watched that huge game that he had. His throws were amazing against the Minnesota Vikings, but every play call, he was literally just like it looked like college. Like he was waiting for the play call to come in, looking over to the sideline. Like everything runs through McVay. I firmly believe that Jared Goff has zero responsibility on the field to call audibles or anything like that. He just runs what McVay calls him. And from that standpoint, he is the ultimate system quarterback. But I also think that system quarterback, because a lot of people say Carson Wentz was one because of Nick Foles, just pretty much interchangeable success. I don't think system quarterback is necessarily a bad thing, but I more so want to use that as a comparison. If Goff can kill the Minnesota Vikings defense, surely the rightful coach of the year from last year, Doug Peterson, with Carson Wentz at his disposal, can also put up similar results. Going to number 5, Alshon Jeffrey. He's back, baby. He was huge in his comeback game against Tennessee. Was outstanding. Had a bunch of big-time catches. I think 3 really big-time catches. Had a touchdown. Night and day better production than we get from our wide receivers. It sucked that Nelson Aguilar didn't show up. But Alshon also was a monster against this very same secondary in the NFC Championship game. He had 5 catches, 85 yards, 2 touchdowns. Absolutely bossed that secondary. Didn't matter if it was Xavier Rhodes. Didn't matter if Sendejo or Harrison Smith were trying to help up. Alshon was making plays left, right, and center. And the fact that he pretty much has returned to the offense, his chemistry with Carson Wentz looks flawless. So I would say if you've had Alshon Jeffrey riding your bench in fantasy, I definitely would look at playing him this week because he looks like he's going to put up some really, really good numbers and really make up for his limited playing time throughout the preseason and the first couple games of the regular season. I think he's going to be on fire. We might have a 1,000-yard receiver on our hands here again. Go number 4. This is the last kind of big applaud because it does seem like I'm more so talking about the Vikings than I am the Eagles, but this is something that needs to be noted is Dalvin Cook didn't play in that playoff game, and I think he could be an X factor that not enough people are talking about. You look at what one player in that NFC Championship game had a good game against the Philadelphia Eagles, and it was Jerick McKinnon. He had 130 total yards. He had 11 catches. They were doing a lot of quick passes out of the backfield, and that's always been something that the Philadelphia Eagles have struggled against. Latavius Murray's not catching those balls. I think a guy like Dalvin Cook, who's not as good of a receiver as McKinnon, but also can do that. He can handle that load. I think that's definitely something that I want to keep an eye on. I know it's a different play caller. They may have a different scheme. But, if they look at that advantage and think Dalvin Cook can be a guy that can catch 7, 6, 7, 8, 9 catches out of the backfield, Philly always struggles against those guys, man, for whatever reason. I don't know what it is. Our team's not that good at tackling. Dalvin Cook could be an X factor for the Vikings. While everyone's focusing on the secondary, on Jalen Mills, on Thielen and Diggs, Dalvin Cook's a guy I'm definitely not going to take my eye off of. Going to number 3 is the offensive line needs to protect Carson Wentz better. They have not been hot against the Colts. I think they gave up 5 sacks. Against the Titans, it seemed like every time they went with an all-out blitz, with, yes, when you get an all-out blitz, you more often than not, you probably will be able to touch the quarterback, but they were getting with far too much success. And in the last video, we talked about Jalen Mills and Jim Swartz. I think it came out 2 days ago. I also talked about the offensive line. I think I have confidence that the offensive line is going to put it all together and come back better than ever, just because I think that change from a Nick Foles style that they've had for so long, now going back to Carson Wentz, these guys are just overthinking it. You know, it's a different style of quarterback you need to protect for, and those guys are too good not to be able to turn around, versus, say, looking at the secondary, when I don't know if the talent is there, if the scheme is there for those guys to turn around, but I do have confidence in the offensive line to do better. We don't know if Everson Griffin's going to play. He has some mental health stuff going on, and they've kind of just, you know, told him to just, hey, man, just chill. Just go on vacation for a little bit. So that would be a big loss there for the Minnesota Vikings, even though it didn't really matter because Big V, Hal Vaitai, backup tackle, put Everson Griffin in a body bag in the NFC Championship game. I don't think he gave him a single pressure. Going to number 2 is we need a balanced game plan from Doug Peterson. We had 55 passing against the Tennessee Titans, and that is not going to cut it against the Minnesota Vikings. If you look at the NFC Championship game, I think Foles threw it 30 sometimes. We had 30. It was almost like a perfect split between pass and run. Now, obviously, because the game was out of hand, you can run the ball more because you're trying to control the clock. But we need to go much more towards that. If we ran the ball more against Tennessee, which we completely abandoned it in the second half, got a lot of Andy Reid vibes from that. If we had a more balanced attack, we might have been able to kill the clock up enough that and got points that 17-0 run that the Tennessee Titans were able to pull off to force that game into overtime would have never happened because there just wouldn't have been enough time. So I want to see a more balanced attack. Don't just have Carson Wentz try to ball out because you saw what Jared Goff did. While that should give you confidence that you can have Wentz execute and get a lot of success, I don't think that that's going to be the ultimate strategy because you still got to, you look at the Rams. They still had Todd Gurley doing his thing. They kept some sort of balance. And it really, the run game set up Jared Goff to have all those big explosive plays downfield. We need to do the same. And number 1, obviously, it's a rematch from the 38-7 NFC Championship game. We cannot lose this game. And, this is probably a game that the Minnesota Vikings have had circled on their schedule since it got announced. They're like, that is our revenge game. We need to make amends to our fan base. And this, for us, being in Philadelphia, there's not a better game for us to try and recapture momentum. I even think having the Vikings and being able to beat the Vikings would be more of a momentum boost than beating the Giants or beating the Cowboys or anything like that. This is the game that I believe we can put it all together, can turn the season around. It is still going to be a little bit worrisome if they play well and the defense plays well. Then it becomes that whole, why does our defense play so much better at home than they do on the road? And are these road woes going to really affect us down the long run? Because you can't just go 8-8. You can't just constantly win all your games at home and just play like complete dog shit on the road. But I mean, it is what it is. We got to take what we have it, and we have it at home. This defense needs to show up like they have all year long. And this is a massive game. I think that the momentum boost that Philadelphia can get from winning this game could very well, and I think most likely can be the turning point in this season so that we can put everything back together and make a serious run. So what do you guys feel about this Philadelphia Eagles Minnesota Vikings matchup? Let me know in the comment section below. Are you hyped? Are you nervous? Are you worried? Are you excited? What are you feeling? What matchups are you looking for? Let me know in the comments. And that does it for me today, guys. Thank you for watching. As always, it's your first time stopping by. Don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button, smash the like button if you enjoyed. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.